Good afternoon from Copenhagen and a warm welcome to our CBIT webinar on early lessons learned from CBIT project implementation in Chile and Uruguay, hosted by the Global Coordination Platform. My name is Frederik Staun, and I'm a climate change expert here at the UNEP D2 partnership, and I will be the moderator for this webinar. So a couple of practical things before we move to the main content of our webinar. This webinar is going to be about 60 minutes long and will include a Q&A session at the end. We therefore highly recommend you to use this opportunity to ask questions. You can send us your questions throughout the whole webinar on the right side of your screen in the GoToWebinar software. And we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible at the end. Please do not forget to mention the name of the panelists that the question is for. This part, the Q&A session, is very important as we have two very interesting presentations from Chile and Uruguay. And please take advantage of this opportunity and ask questions. In case you cannot stay until the end of the webinar or want to rewatch the presentation, you can find the recording of the webinar at the CBIT Global Coordination Platform in the section Knowledge Corner. Here you can also find earlier CBIT webinars, which can be very useful for your work. So please have a look. You will also receive an email after the webinar with the link to the recording. Now I would like to briefly introduce the speakers of today's webinar. So I have already shortly introduced myself. Our first speaker from Chile is Soledad Palma. She's an environmental engineer with a background in CDM project development and carbon accounting. She has been working at the Ministry of Energy in Chile for 3 years. And since October 18, she's the project manager for the CBIT project in Chile. Our second speaker is from Uruguay is Virginia Sena. She's a chemical engineer by training and has vast experience in the field of greenhouse gas inventory preparations for the sectors energy, industrial processes, and waste. She's now working in the climate change division and is in charge of the CBIT project for Uruguay. Now I would like to shortly tell you about the content of today's webinar. First, I will give a very short introduction on the status of CBIT projects worldwide and the CBIT Global Coordination Platform. Then we will hear about the lessons learned from CBIT project implementation in Chile, followed by the lessons learned from Uruguay. At the end, we will have the Q&A session where everybody is encouraged to engage. So this is the world map that you can find on the CBIT Global Coordination Platform. And as you can see by the color marking, many countries across Latin America and the Caribbean, Europe, Africa, and Asia, and the Pacific are already engaged in CBIT activities, but they are at very different stages. So as you can see on the bar to the left, nearly 30 countries, 28 countries have had their concepts approved and are now preparing their full CBIT project proposals. 6 countries have their project approved and are now preparing for project implementation. And 8 countries are actually implementing their projects now. 2 of the 10 are global projects, and the CBIT Global Coordination Platform is one of the 10. And then FAO also has a global project in the Afulu sector. And the web address is www.cbitplatform.org. And the purpose of the platform is to enable coordination, maximize learning opportunities, and enable knowledge sharing among CBIT countries. So I would like to just mention a few examples of how countries can benefit from participating in the CBIT platform. And one of the most important features is that you can reach out to other CBIT country focal points to learn from their experiences of implementing specific activities of interest. You can find contact information and the short profile at all project pages, and the whole purpose of providing this information is that you engage in a dialogue and basically share lessons learned and improve the implementation of your activities. When designing CBIT projects, the platform provides easy access to understand what other projects focus on and what the project progress indicators are. So if you're about to design a CBIT project, it's also an excellent way to get inspiration to shape the project. So this is just to underline that the platform can be useful for countries that are both designing their projects but also implementing their CBIT projects. When implementing project activities, country focal points are supposed to upload documents, workshop reports, analyses, and other project documents, and this will give users of the platform access to a wealth of information and learning. There's also the self-assessment tool. So yearly or bi-yearly self-assessment of capacity will help countries to bridge the gaps in their transparency systems. Finally, we also have webinars, articles, and other knowledge sharing services to promote peer learning. One example is you can find under the section Knowledge Corner is our perspectives, where right now there are 3 articles about the CBIT projects in Costa Rica, Uruguay, and in Chile. So please take a look. That there's a lot of detailed information that could be useful for you there. And finally, the last slide. We are all part of the global CBIT family, and to maximize the impact of the CBIT Global Coordination Platform, it is essential that all country focal points invest time in updating country profiles and actively participate in peer learning. Peer learning totally depends on an active participation of the engaged countries. The target for CBIT, as stated in the CBIT progress report published by the GEF, is to support a minimum of 100 countries. So the purpose of the platform is to give users easy and structured access to information about all projects, both now and in the future. And of course, that we see more and more countries are starting implementation, so more and more information will be available and more peer learning will be possible. There will also be in-person workshops coming up, and there's one every year where we will get a chance to also know each other. So you are part of the CBIT family, and feel free to get in touch if you have questions or suggestions on how to improve this common space. That's all for me. Now we will move on to the first presentation.
Thank you very much for the invitation. First, I'm going to share with you a brief description of CBIT Chile, and after that I will present you some barriers faced and lessons learned during the implementation of the project. Project objective of CBIT Chile is strengthen and improve transparency mechanism of Chilean national institutions for domestic and United Nations Conventions reporting. Project components of CBIT Chile are 2. Component 1 is strengthening of Chile's transparency framework for mitigation and adaptation actions, and here outcome 1.1 is climate data and analysis is integrated into policy making and international reporting. Here we consider 2 main products. First, the idea is to design a climate platform including mitigation actions, adaptation measures, and interactive tools. Also, the platform will include a structure to organize all the information asked for other ministries. for example, for the development of the biennial update report. Before to start the implementation of climate platform, we are going to train public servants on how to use the platform information. The other product, a very important product, is the National GHG Prospective System, which will contain updated projections of greenhouse gas emissions at a national and sectoral levels, guiding the definition and the monitoring of emission reduction goals. Of course, in order to comply the commitment assumed under the Paris Agreement. Outcome 1.2. Chile's NDC is being tracked and evaluated. The objective is to design a methodology for the evaluation, monitoring, and updating of our NDC in the long term. One relevant activity included in this outcome is to develop a quality assurance and quality control plan for the system. Component 2. Institutionalization of the public climate expenditure consider two main tasks. Define a methodology to account climate expenditure in Chile for support and link with the financing strategy, and to develop a training plan for public institutions on the current status of the project is under implementation. You can see here a picture of our inception workshop with the steering committee, and here you can see our Ministry of Environment in Chile talking in the external communication workshop. She explained the importance of the transparency in our climate actions to build trust and also to implement effective climate change management. The project partner of CBIT Chile are executing entity, Ministry of Environment in Chile, financial entity, Global Environment Fund, implementing entity, UN Environment, and also other entities that provide technical support are UNEP DTU Partnership and Centro de Transparencia Climática. The key activities related to transparency in CBIT Chile are 5. The first one, National GHG Prospective System. As I explained it before, the objective is to design a transparent and robust strong GHG prospective system, which will help Chile to planning in the long term. The centralized platform of climate information will help the division of climate change in Chile, not only to disseminate information for the citizens, which is very important, but also to organize in a friendly platform all the information requested to other ministries for the development of our biennial update report, and also to monitoring the mitigation measures compromise. Methodologies for tracking adaptation. Here the situation in Chile is that we have 7 sectoral adaptation plans of silvo-agriculture, biodiversity, fishing, health, infrastructure, cities and energy, plus 2 plans under development for water resources and tourism. However, we don't have a system to measure the progress of the adaptation capacity in the country. Therefore, we need to work in the design of indicators to monitor the adaptation evolution. Review and update of the NDC. Here we consider to develop a methodology for the monitoring, evaluation and updating process of our NDC in the long term. And finally, reporting climate expenditure, and that's related to design a methodology to account climate expenditure in Chile. Here I put the climate change law because we are working in that in the Ministry of Environment, because we need to formalize all these instruments, and also all the stakeholders involved in the climate change issues in Chile need to be regulated. Therefore, this is a strong instrument for Chile, for climate change issues in Chile. Let me show you some lessons learned from the initial stakeholders engagement, which are very important for engage key partners. Here we think that it's very important to make alliances, not only with public sector, but also with universities, private sectors, and ONG. Considering that CBIT Chile includes different implementation areas as mitigation, adaptation, and climate finance, many relevant stakeholders are involved. Therefore, we have had talking permanently with different actors. For example, during the elaboration of GHG projections of energy sector, we have talked with private association, as Association of Generators of Chile, with universities as Universidad de Chile and Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez, and with other ministries as Ministry of Energy, Finance, Transport, Mining, and so on. For other sectors, as waste, we consider also to talk with local stakeholders, for example, with municipalities. The idea is to coordinate and work together, building always synergies. Other important point is to consider that historically the Ministry of Environment had worked with different organizations, but the relationships were not formalized. Therefore, the climate change law will be an effective instrument to ensure the coordination and collaboration with relevant stakeholders involved in the climate change actions. And something that I think we are in depth is to promote collaboration with other countries in the region in the framework of CBIT, because now we do that, but more in the framework of GHG inventory report. Considering the role of Centro de Transparencia Climática and the new professional of UN Environment, CBIT regional expert, we think that we can promote the regional cooperation. And now, if we think in the political point of view, we are trying to permanently highlight the benefits of the project in the medium and in the long term, considering the international commitments. For example, CBIT Chile will give relevant sources for the NDC updating process and also for the development of long-term climate strategy. Both things are considered in the Paris Agreement, and we need to remark that. Also, we need to highlight benefits in the short term. In Chile, we have each 4 years we have a different government. Therefore, now our president, which started in 2018, called Sebastián Piñera, and also the Ministry of Environment need to to achieve some commitment during this 4 year. That means until 2022. For instance, we need to create a national GHG prospective system. This system is a product of CBIT and also is a compromise in this government period. Therefore, it's very important to highlight that. And finally, we always explain the importance that have in CBIT Chile the transparency and also the training activities, because we need to improve the capacity building in the country in climate change issues. If we think and give you some other advices learned during the implementation of CBIT Chile, our main barrier was the deadlines. Administrative issues made very slow the implementation of CBIT Chile. Maybe the reasons are very different. One can be the distance and the time difference which generates some problems. Other trouble are administrative procedures, which are different and new for Chile in this case. In fact, some procedures are possible for UN environment. Therefore, that should be developed, which take more time for the implementation of the project. And also, it's complicated when the agency doesn't have office in the country of implementation, because it's problematic for the payment to providers of products, studies, and so on. Additionally, it's important to consider some unexpected milestones. For instance, here in Chile, we will be lead COP25, and that generated some internal compromise defined previously for 2020, now should be finalized in December and 2019. Consequently, we need to work quickly. And finally, again, I want to highlight the relevance of being in permanent coordination and collaboration with other institutions from public sector, universities, private sector, and ONGs, because that can grant validity and make strong the results. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Soledad, for this very interesting presentation. I'm sure that there are a lot of questions. We'll take them after the next presentation. So now we go to Uruguay and Virginia.
Hello, people. Good morning or good afternoon for everyone there. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation from the CBIT Global Coordination Platform to participate here in this webinar as a presenter. This invitation was very useful for me to assess how our approach could help other countries, and emphasize this in the presentation. Well, here we have the project objective. The CBIT project objective in Uruguay is to enhance the efficiency of national climate change actions and the synergies with other related national actions, policies, and measures related to climate change. The way to enhance this efficiency is to strengthen national capacities, both institutional and technical, pursuing a more efficient articulation to allow and enhance enabling environment for the transparency-related activities. It is also an objective to be more efficient in the definition, development, and implementation of policies and measures based on more timely and accurate information, monitoring, and assessment of the instruments applied to face climate change. Then, the project components to reach the just mentioned objectives are focused on the establishment of an efficient and articulated institutionality for transparency, and also to develop tools, to take the trainings, and to receive the assistance that it is necessary to meet the provisions stipulated in Article 13 of the Paris Agreement. These are the two main components of the project. As you may know, the current status of the project is under implementation. We started the execution of the project in March 2018, and it is a 3-year long project. So the planned end date of the project is February 2021. Regarding the institutionalization of the transparency system, these are the key activities for the establishment of an efficient and articulated institutionality for transparency. As you can see in the slide, at the very beginning of the project, we established an interinstitutional national transparency task force. This was fundamental for the beginning of the project, and I will explain a little more regarding this task force in the next slide. Another activity that helped us to have in mind all the aspects to consider when we are trying to institutionalize a transparency system was to take the self-assessment tool provided in the Global Coordination Platform. It was really useful for us to identify where we are stronger and where we are still weak, and then where we have to build capacity and institutional arrangements to enhance transparency. So if you can take this self-assessment, I think that it would be very useful for you also. Another core activity that we are working on is about the design of the monitoring system. It is a very core activity for the project. In this time, we are focusing in the monitoring. We are focusing the monitoring system in the tracking of the commitments we communicated in our first nationally determined contribution, which these commitments are in line with our national climate change policy. In the design, we are putting in black and white which are the institutions from the government that are responsible for reporting on the progress of each objective and each measure included in the nationally determined contribution. This work will set the basis for the institutional arrangements that will be needed to institutionalize the transparency system. So this is a very important work. We are also developing methodological shifts containing all information needed to define the more adequate indicators to track the progress towards the targets established in the NDC for both objectives and measures. As a result of this work, we will have in a near future a knowledge sharing web-based information system on which we are already working on with the support of the project also. This is the design of this monitoring system is really a key activity we are working on. Also, since the transparency system is pretty dependent on the national GHG inventories estimation, we consider it has been a key activity for the transparency system, the close coordination we established with an interinstitutional working group called on national GHG inventories, and carry out a lot of activities to improve the inventories estimations in coordination with this working group. For example, the project supported a workshop on uncertainties of GHG emissions estimations, which also counted with the support of the National GHG Inventories Latin American Network. In the same sense, the project is also supporting the development of the LULUCF matrix. This is to include in future inventories emissions from some carbon pools that are not being estimated by now because of the lack of this data, and with the support of the project we are going to have this data to finally report these emissions. Well, now, which are the main lessons learned from the initial phase regarding the stakeholder engagement? As previously mentioned, the first step was the establishment of a national transparency task force. In this sense, I have to say that we had the advantage to have an interinstitutional group already in place, which had been working during 2017, just on the previous year of the project starting. This group have been working on the NDC elaboration, and then this group assumed naturally the task on programming, monitoring, reporting and verification of the climate change national policy and the NDC, which is a core task for transparency. So this group was assimilated to the National Transparency Task Force that we planned when we designed the project. In this working group are participating the majority of the institutions involved in transparency-related activities, from the National Climate Change and Variability Response System. This is an interinstitutional system that was established several years ago, in 2009, to coordinate climate change and variability-related initiatives. The coordination among this system was very key to obtain a strong stakeholder engagement. Nevertheless, the task that this group assumed implied a lot of work from the institutional stakeholders. it is very demanding and time consuming. So human resources to support other relevant ministries have been hired with the project funding with our CBIT project, and this really helped to progress easily in this work. Well, how the high-level political buy-in was from the initial phase. Here it is important to point out that the project implementation is growing on a very important political basis, which is the referred national policy on climate change. I have to say that this policy was adopted by the National Environmental Cabinet, and then it was approved by the executive branch by an executive decree in November 2017. And it is important to say that in the same text of the policy, it is established that the policy is subject to a national annual, reliable, transparent, timely and comparable monitoring system. This is a clear political signal that the domestic reporting is relevant to policymakers. Besides, in the same text of the policy, it is also established that the first nationally determined contribution will serve as an instrument to implement the policy. So, the work is being under development with the project support is very welcomed by high-level political stakeholders, and all relevant institutions gives their support in the framework of the national climate change response system. I mean that all the work it is being developed under the project is really useful for policymakers. Other issue to point out is that climate change adaptation constitutes a national priority, and as far as it is included in the project is well supported by the government also. Just to finish, another issue that I have to say and to strengthen is that also the project results contribute to other reporting requirements that Uruguay have. So this is important also to the high political level. For example, we now have to report on the SDG 13 on climate action, and approximately report to the Sena framework, and the results from this CBIT project and all the efforts to enhance the transparency, to enhance the quality of the other initiatives, also the reporting on the national communication and the BURs, and other climate initiatives that are also supported and coordinated with this with the development of this CBIT project, also contributes to these other reporting requirements. So I think the development and the results that will be obtained by this project really are of political interest of the government or interest for the government of Europe. Okay, here you have the Ministry of Environment web page and also my personal email. In case you need to contact me for further information, you are welcome. Okay, thank you for your attention. And I will be available later if you have any questions on this particular presentation during this webinar. Okay, thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Virginia, for this very informative presentation. I'm very sorry that I understand that there were some technical problems, so it was a bit difficult to hear the presentation. But the good news is that the recorded version will be we will improve the sound on the recorded version. So please go there and listen to it again if you had problems getting all the information from Uruguay. Now we're going to the Q&A session, and we have received some questions. And the first question is about stakeholder engagement. So I think this question goes to both Virginia and Soledad. So the question is, do you feel that stakeholders from different sectors and government, private sector, NGOs and academia are aware of the importance of transparency and committed to it? So I think especially Chile, Soledad, you already touched on it and the importance of alliances, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit on how private or stakeholders can be engaged and the main challenges. Soledad, please go ahead.
I think that always the more complicated situation is to involve academia, private sector, and ONGs, because in the public sector we are very coordinated and we always work together. But CBIT is a good opportunity for us because we can make more training activities and a lot of workshop related to the transparency, and in this moment we can invite academia, private sector and ONGs, mostly considering the COP25 is also a good opportunity for us because private sector is very interested in that. They want to participate in all the activities, they want to participate in the organization. Therefore, we are trying to link everything, CBIT Chile, this convention, and all the action made from the private sector. We have a program also here in Chile called Uruguay and Chile, and here we have a lot of private companies working in that. Therefore, we are trying to make these alliances and working together all the time. But of course, it's a challenge, and we need to talk every time with these stakeholders involved in all the process developed here in the Ministry of Environment. It's complicated, but we are trying to work very hard in that. In fact, in our climate change law process, we are working hand to hand with private sectors, ONG, and universities also.
Okay, thank you very much, Soledad. Virginia, maybe you can add a little bit on how you have engaged the universities and academia or private sector, whatever you think is more relevant.
Yes, as well as the case of Chile, it is a challenge to involve these other sectors, private sector, NGOs, and academia. We had the participation of these sectors during the. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Okay. During the climate change national policy elaboration, we carried out several workshops with the participation of these other sectors, and they contributed to the climate change national policy. And now we are planning to have some consultative instances regarding the monitoring system. I talked to you in the presentation. In one hand, sensitizing the other, sensitizing the other sectors about the work we are carrying out. To told everyone about the progress on our NDC measures and objectives, and also to include these other sectors in the implementation of the measures that still has an opportunity to implement and see how it is the better way to implement.
Thank you very much, Virginia. There's a follow-up question a little bit related to this. If you can maybe talk a little bit about how these stakeholders, what benefits do they expect from transparency, or do they only see it as like an additional burden, like bureaucratic burden, or do they actually understand that transparency can have benefits from them? Maybe you can provide a few concrete examples. So Soledad, you can start, please.
Frederik, can you repeat me the question, please? I can't hear you so well now.
Okay, no, the question is that if any of these stakeholders, do they understand how they can benefit from transparency, or do they see it only as an additional administrative workload? So more some concrete examples of, have you, like private sector or university, can they understand why they have to be involved in transparency and how they can benefit from it?
Okay. Thank you. As I told you before, we are making a climate change law, and this climate change law is more general. We don't have specific measures for the private sector, but we are working also in a long-term strategy for the climate change. And in this long-term strategy, we are going to include some goals for different sectors in Chile. And the idea is to make a strong regulation of all the intensive sectors, mainly energy sectors. The transport sector and the mining sector are the most intensive sectors related to GHG emissions. Therefore, they understand that they need to work. They need to implement mitigation measures and also adaptation measures. Therefore, they are very worried about our regulations and instruments developed by the Ministry of Environment. Therefore, they are talking always with us, asking us about these goals, about the obligations, and they understand that therefore they are very proactive and they want to work with us defining these goals and this obligation. Therefore, I think they, at least with CBIT Chile, we receive a very good responses for the private sector, from the private sector. They understand that if they have more information, they can work better, they can make better mitigation measures in their respective sectors.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is very interesting input for other countries as well. Virginia, do you have anything to add? Yes, Virginia, can you hear me?
Yes. Regarding the private sector, we are now taking an assessment of where are the opportunities for the private sectors in the implementation of certain NDC measures. I think that the private sector could only find a benefit or for them regarding this work if they find a business opportunity. So we are assessing this, and NGOs. I think that they could find the benefit if they find that the government are in the right way, mostly on adaptation measures. I think that's it.
No, thank you, Virginia. I think it's, especially the private sector is complicated, and the business case might be. I mean, it's a good opportunity to get them engaged if you can present them for business case. The next question is, what is the average timeline for project implementation in Chile and Uruguay, and how does the project duration impact the delivery of the project? So I guess it's if you find that you have sufficient time to implement all the activities in your projects, and maybe Soledad, you can start.
I think that 3 years is a good time, but in our case, it was complicated to start the implementation, mostly for administrative issues. Therefore, if we received the money in, well, no, UN Environment received the money to start implementation in August of 2018, but the truth is that we can start the implementation in January of 2019. Therefore, of course, we need to work quickly. We need to run to can comply all the commitments. But 3 years, I think, is a good time for the goals of CBIT Chile.
Okay, thank you. So, Virginia, can you explain a little bit about the duration of your project and if you think it's sufficient time to implement everything?
Yes, the duration of our project is 3 years also, and we think it is sufficient time. And since the next NDC horizon is 2025, we are on time developing the methodological issues that we have to develop with the CBIT to be more prepared to the next NDC and the upcoming rules.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is that how are you ensuring that local capacity is being built throughout the project implementation? And Soledad, please, if you can start.
The local capacity, here you are talking if we have, I don't know, a measure to can review if we made training for all the sectors, all the stakeholders?
Yeah, for example, or like how you in general ensure that it's not only external consultants that are doing all the work, but how you ensure that local capacity in the ministries is being developed, for example. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we consider different trainings activities in CBIT Chile, and the idea is to make different kind of trainings. For in one side, specific trainings with maybe more expert group related to perspective or to inventory or so on, and on the other hand, we are trying to make some trainings for all the people, because the idea is to learn how to use some specific systems or platform, but also to invite all the people to be part of that. Therefore, we are working in the both sides and making training for different stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. Virginia, do you have anything to add on how you ensure that local capacity is being built?
Yes, in our CBIT project, all the human resources that we are hiring with the project are local consultants, and for example, we have a new local consultant supporting the work for the Energy Ministry, another local consultant supporting the work of the Agriculture Ministry, another local consultant supporting the to the Ministry of Environment regarding adaptation issues. And we are working all together with other ministries representatives in this interinstitutional working group, and we are basically learning by doing. Taking benefit from several training activities organized by other networks or other initiatives, like the Let's Lack a practical community on monitoring and evaluation of policies, like the GAG Latin American Network, and other initiatives that give us training and experience exchanges with other countries also. But basically, we are learning by doing, and yes, benefiting from these other initiatives and capacity building opportunities.
Okay, thank you very much, Virginia. There's one very, very last question, and I think we have Soledad. Maybe you can try to reply to this one. So, how do you ensure sustainability after the closure of the project? Actually, this is to Uruguay. So, especially in Uruguay, where many consultants have been hired, do they expect some new positions will be created within the ministry? So, Virginia,
this is a good question. Yes, sustainability of consultants is an issue. Really is an issue. But since we are working very close and also increasing capacity of permanent human resources in other ministries, we think that the sustainability of the activities is assured, not the sustainability of all the human resources once the CBIT project ends. But I think that yes, the main tasks of monitoring and elaborating NDCs, transparency are covered by this interinstitutional framework we have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Virginia. And I think this is the time is gone. So thank you very much to both our panelists Soledad and Virginia, thank you very much for your informative presentations and for sharing your lessons learned. Other countries that have been participating, please feel free to contact the countries for further information. Yeah, thank you very much to the audience for active participation. And if you have any questions or comments, please do not hesitate to contact us. And please also keep an eye open for future webinars. And thank you for your attention, and we wish you a good day and night from Copenhagen. Thank you very much.